Have you ever wondered why her silence stays with you longer than her words? Why her absence feels like punishment when she never promised to stay? Why her attention feels like proof that you exist, and her indifference like evidence that you don't? You called it love. You told yourself it was deep. But somewhere in that story was a man slowly disappearing, not into her arms, but into a version of himself he never chose. You see, most men don't fall because of women. They fall because they never studied the longing they bring to women. They build shrines to her affection without ever building a soul. And that's where Socrates enters. Not as a romantic, not as a cynic, but as the one who dared to ask, what does it mean to love without understanding your appetite for love? He lived in a time of poets and politicians, men drunk on charm, applause, seduction, but he saw through all of it. He knew the danger wasn't woman, it was the unexamined man. He warned not with bitterness, but with fire-tempered reason. A man who worships what enchants him without studying it will fall, and not because she is cruel, but because he is blind. Socrates saw that beauty can bait the untrained soul, and that most men chase form while ignoring the function that governs it. She becomes the test, not because she designs it that way, but because nature already did. You didn't fall in love. You disappeared, not into her body, into an image, a version of yourself shaped by what you thought would keep her near. It felt like love, but it wasn't. It was erosion. It began with her eyes, not because they were cruel, but because something in the way she looked at you made you forget the weight you were carrying. That weight, the hunger to be chosen, the ache to be seen, had been living in you long before she appeared. But when she smiled, it softened. And you mistook that relief for truth. You told yourself she saw the real you, but the truth is, you hadn't seen him either. And so you gave. Not out of overflow, but out of strategy. You adjusted your words. You withheld your doubt. You blurred the edges of your mission to make space for her uncertainty. And no, she didn't ask you to, but you believed that if you gave enough, if you bent just right, she would stay. Not just with her body, with her gaze, her warmth, her affirmation that you mattered. And for a while, she did. But even then, something in her knew that what you were offering wasn't presence, it was performance. And you knew it too. You felt it every time you avoided a truth. Every time you hesitated to hold your boundary. Every time you made her emotions more sacred than your own clarity. You didn't mean to lose yourself, but slowly, piece by piece, you began to orbit her. Her needs, her mood, her rhythm. You told yourself it was love, but love doesn't ask you to become invisible. You weren't loving her. You were trying to be the man you thought she wanted, so you could finally escape the man you feared you were. That's not devotion, that's disappearance. And when she finally stepped back, whether in silence, in coldness, or in confusion, you shattered. Not because she left, but because without her gaze, you couldn't see yourself anymore. And that's what hurt the most, not the loss of her. The realization that your sense of worth had been tethered to someone who was never supposed to hold it. She didn't take your soul. You gave it away, one compromise at a time. You didn't fall. You vanished. You were not raised to lead. You were raised to seek permission. You were taught that the highest form of love is sacrifice. But no one taught you what should never be sacrificed. They told you that being good meant being soft, that being kind meant being agreeable, that to win her you had to become less of a storm and more of a sponge. Absorb her pain, mirror her moods, shape yourself to fit her need. But they didn't tell you what that shape would cost you. You learned to bend before you learned to stand. And you called it empathy. You called it maturity. But what it really was fear in a suit. Fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear that who you are, raw, rooted, and unpolished, would never be enough. So you became what you thought she wanted, not because she demanded it, but because everything in you feared what would happen if she walked away. And in doing so, you made her the throne and yourself the servant. You mistook obedience for love, and she felt it. Not with her mind, with her instinct. She felt the tremble in your conviction, the pause in your truth, the way your center wavered every time she questioned it, and something in her pulled back. Not because she wanted control, but because you gave it away. She wasn't looking for dominance, she was looking for direction. But you were too busy proving how safe you were to remember how steady you needed to be. You thought your emotional availability would anchor her, but you forgot that availability without structure is just water on the floor. It spills, it seeps, it weakens the foundation. And so she tested you, not to play games, but to measure the thing in you that even you were too afraid to examine, your spine. And when she saw it bend again and again, when she saw that your principles had a price, that your presence was a performance, that your mission could be bought by her mood, she stepped away, not to hurt you, but because she could no longer trust what you became around her. That's the lie you were fed, that if you surrendered enough, she would stay. But women do not follow what kneels. They follow what leads, not with control, with clarity. And no one taught you how to hold that, because no one taught you how to hold yourself. Socrates did not offer comfort. He offered clarity. While men around him praised beauty and sang odes to their lovers, he stood in silence and asked the only question that mattered. Have you studied the thing that moves you? He watched men fall into women like water, flooding toward affection, drowning in desire, calling it love when it was really disorientation. And he knew the danger wasn't woman, it was the man who had never examined his own appetite. To Socrates, the soul had structure, not chaos, not vibes, not emotion, structure. It was composed of three parts: reason, spirit, appetite. Reason was to rule, spirit was to defend, and appetite was to serve. But the men he saw, they had reversed the order. Appetite ruled them, spirit defended their hunger, and reason was silent, buried beneath the ache to be wanted. These men were not free, they were captives, chained by longing they never questioned. And worst of all, they called their chains love. So Socrates gave them the hardest truth a man can face. If you have not examined your desire, it will enslave you. You will call it devotion, you will call it romance, but it will hollow you from the inside, until all that's left is your need, wrapped in poetry. This is the man who becomes a tyrant to himself, not through rage, through longing. He wants her touch, her gaze, her laughter. He needs her to reflect back that he is enough, and so he molds himself. He softens his truth, he sacrifices his form on the altar of her affection. But what he does not realize is this: every time he bends without reason, he dissolves, and she feels it, even if she can't name it. She feels the weight of being worshipped by a man who has no throne of his own. That's the tragedy Socrates saw, that when appetite is crowned king, even love becomes manipulation. And that's the warning he left us. Not to fear desire, but to understand it, to trace it, to ask, what is it I'm really chasing when I chase her? Is it her, or is it the feeling of finally mattering? Because if you don't know, she won't trust you, and neither will your soul. She was never trying to break you, but she did expose you, not with words, not with rage, with presence. That's the part most men misunderstand. They think she pulled away because she changed. They think she turned cold or cruel or unpredictable. But she didn't shift randomly. she responded. To the man you became around her, to the need you tried to hide, to the weight of your expectation pressing against her instincts. Because she is not calculating, she is calibrated, not by society, not by intention, but by nature. And nature doesn't negotiate with the story you told yourself. It reacts. It selects. It mirrors. You see, she is not testing you to play games. She is testing to locate, to feel, can this man hold me without disappearing into me? Can he lead without suppressing? Can he stay rooted when I shake the ground beneath him? If the answer is no, she doesn't punish you, she withdraws. Not to wound you, but because something ancient in her knows. If she must carry both your longing and your direction, you are no longer safe to trust. That's what most men miss. They think emotional availability is enough, that if they listen, nod, reflect, empathize, she'll feel held. But if you are emotionally open and structurally absent, she does not feel held. She feels burdened because she doesn't want to be the compass. She wants to feel yours. And if yours trembles every time she withdraws, she knows, even if she never says it, that she has become your God. And no woman wants to be worshipped by a man who has no altar of his own. That's not romance, that's pressure. And pressure without structure breeds resentment. First in her, then in you. So when she pulls back, you call it rejection. You call it confusion. But the truth is simpler. She was a mirror. She didn't leave you. She showed you that you had already left yourself. You thought love would make you whole. You thought her affection would fill in the cracks. That if she stayed, if she smiled, if she touched you like she meant it, you'd finally be enough. But you were never building connection. You were bargaining, trading pieces of yourself for moments of closeness, sacrificing clarity to stay in her orbit. You thought this made you romantic, but all she saw was a man who couldn't stand still in his own skin. And she did what nature always does when trust dissolves. She stepped back. You didn't understand it. You tried to be kinder, more agreeable, more present, but every new gesture came from panic, not power, and panic smells like instability. It doesn't soothe, it signals collapse. That's what you became, not a man. A mirror trying to reflect her needs without ever revealing your own. You bent, you gave, you adjusted your beliefs, your priorities, your posture, until all she was left with was an outline, a man-shaped container, empty of mission, void of spine. And what no one tells you is this: a woman cannot follow a man who does not hold form, not because she's cruel, but because she's designed to respond to presence. And you had none. Not really. Because you never built a soul. You built a shrine. To her smile, to her affection, to the fantasy that if you could just make her feel safe enough, she would finally choose you. But she wasn't looking for someone to make her feel safe. She was looking for someone who already is. So when she pulled away, whether with words or distance or silence, you collapsed. Not from heartbreak, from disorientation. You didn't lose her. You lost the only center you had. And that is the fate of the unsold man. Not to be left, to be revealed. Not by her, but by the weight he placed on her shoulders, to give him what he was never willing to give himself. Socrates was not cynical about love. He didn't mock it. He didn't run from it. He studied it. And he found that love, real love, is not what you think it is. It's not a feeling, not a fuse of passion and timing, not the electricity that dances in your chest when she says your name just right. Love, he said, is a ladder, and most men rot on the first rung. It begins with beauty. You see her, you want her, you feel that ancient pull toward the curve of her lips, the softness in her tone, the storm behind her eyes. It awakens something primal, but that's not where it ends. It's where it begins. If you stop there, you are not a lover. You are a collector, a worshipper of form. But Socrates, through the voice of Diotima, taught that love has stages. You begin by desiring the beauty of a body. Then you rise to appreciate beauty wherever it lives. In other bodies, in art, in music, in truth. Then you rise again, beyond beauty, to the mind, to ideas, to principles. And from there, you climb further, to the love of wisdom itself. Until finally, you reach the divine, the form of what is good, not what is pleasurable, what is eternal. But most men never climb, because they mistake desire for destiny. They meet a woman and freeze the ladder at her feet. They make her the end, not the mirror. And they build their kingdom on the first glance, never asking what that glance was meant to reveal. You see, she was never the destination. She was the summons, the threshold, the test. Not because she designed it that way, because love did. Love pulls you in with form, but if you don't ascend, if you cling to the pleasure, the body, the mood, the mirror, you stay there, circling, grasping, begging, and Socrates had a name for that too, madness. A soul ruled by hunger becomes ungovernable, not because it wants too much, but because it doesn't know what it's really trying to reach. She is not the end of your ache, she is the door, and the man who climbs sees this. You do not love her to possess her. You love her because something in her awakened your longing for what is higher. You are not here to chase her. You are not here to impress her. You are here to remember what the world asked you to forget, that a man's worth is not measured by how many women want him, but by how little he bends in the face of what he wants. You tried bending, you tried offering, you tried becoming what you thought she needed, but all she ever wanted was to feel that you were already built, not for her, for yourself. Because she isn't looking for a man who loses himself to love. She's looking for a man who could walk away from love without losing himself at all. That's the paradox. She is not testing your strength to destroy it. She's testing it to feel if it's real. Because if your spine bends every time she pulls back, she knows it was never a spine. It was a strategy. You do not need to be cruel. You do not need to be hard. You need to be true. And truth is not reactive. It is still. It is exact. It does not chase. It does not beg. It does not ask her to be less of a storm, because it has already chosen to be the mountain. So now you know. You were never meant to win her. You were meant to withstand her, because in the end, love is not found in her gaze, or her loyalty, or her softness. It's found in the silence she leaves you in, and what you become inside it. So I ask you now, without metaphor, without music, without mercy, when she no longer chooses you, will you still choose yourself?